A couple days ago, I did a video called Using pH Indicator to Confirm the Rainbow Triggers. So I showed how I lined the pH indicator up over the rainbow, which are the Vedic Sublord, and Star Lord for various bodies. So I had a question from one of our subscribers on the gold chart, specifically for the date of the 27th. So I'm going to go over that here and show how I line everything up to get the good trigger points. So from the prior video, if you hadn't watched that video from a couple days ago, you can go and watch that first. But what I want to focus on here is the B1, B2, and B3 are the most important windows to start with. So I'm going to go with B1 and B2 because I have indication there. I have none on B3. Now we're concentrating on the white and the bright green because those are our high and low indicators. Now the A1 to A6 are the minor fast movers, and I primarily want to use those for confirmation unless there's no other indication on a given day, and then I'll use those points and I look to see where I have a stack of those. A good example of that is right here where my cursor is, right there at about 5 a.m. If you see my cursor line, look at the top 4 rows where I have A1 white, A2 green, A3 green, A4 green. I have a stack there. A1 and A2 are related together. A3 and A4 are related together as a pair, and A5 and A6 after that. You can see right there where we were, we're at the area of that low. So that can be used like that, especially when there are no other indicators on the B1, B2, B3. So right now, I'm not doing anything with C1, C2, MP1, or MP2. Those are not going to be in play for what we're looking at here. So I'm primarily going to concentrate on B1 and B2, and then I'm going to use the pH, which are the bottom 3 rows, pH1, pH2, and pH3. I'm going to look to confirm my time zones with the pH. Now you can use the pH by itself. I'm just showing one way of using these together. So I'm going to do a similar thing to what I did in the video from a couple days ago. So right now I have marked out the indications for the 27th, starting with the B2 window, which is the most important window, and I took that through the end of the session at 4 p.m. on the 27th. So the most important thing happening on this date is this B2 window, this white window right here. That's the first thing I've got marked out with the highlight tool. So we're going to be looking for pivots in that zone. So what I want to do, I usually look for alignment from the panel above to find a point inside this window that's going to give me an important trigger point. So I'm looking for a new high or a new low to form. Now I've got the green B1 window right there. Now look where my cursor is. I'm in the middle of that slow down drift, so I don't have a new high or new low right there. So I don't really have what I'm going to call a prime indication, and I'm not getting a reversal, so there's nothing there. I have no reversal bar. The trend downward drift continues through that point. Now I don't really have a good stack that I like, but I do have green over white, and it's always better to have a mixture of white and green than just all green or all white by themselves. So you can see where I had the green A1 over the white A3 inside the bigger B1 window. At that point, I had the end of that correction, a minor low, and then we had a 3-bar burst to the upside. So if you were looking for a continuation long off that soft correction, you had that trigger pointed out by the A1 and A3 window. So now after that, we do not have anything else in B2. So what we have left are B1 windows. So I've marked those windows. You can see them all marked with the highlight tool or the blue vertical line, which I've used on the narrower windows. You can see all of those windows triggered pivots. The start of this window was that upside reversal there where we were able to get back to a short. I skipped this window. This window we had a high right at the beginning of the window, the retracement high. The downtrend continued. You see we got a minor reaction at the end of that window. On the white window here, we had a minor low. The next window we had a high and a high at the beginning and end of that window. This one here, we're in the fast run. We just had a very minor correction. We had a low in the next window here. We were right at the high here and the low here on the two small B1 windows marked by these two vertical lines. The next window, we had a low at the beginning of the window and a high at the end of the window. Then the last window of the day, we had a high and then a low, minor correction to that little pushback up. So these I separate into prime or scalp setups. So most of these are scalp setups on their own. The prime setup that we had was we made a new high of day in the white B2 window. So we're looking for day highs or day lows in that window, and we got the high of the day at that time there, which set off this nice move down. Now that was the only high or low of the day we had. Now we generally won't get those in these more minor windows of the B1 row, but we can at times. So they do happen, but it's not a frequent occurrence. The rest of these setups are more of scalp trade setups rather than a prime trade that we're going to sit on and look to hold longer. So now what I'm going to do is take a look at this chart and look to bring in the pH indicator so I know ahead of time when I have these indications. So what I can do then is I'm coming up into one of these areas, I can take a look back and see if I can get a pH color match on pH or 1 or pH 2 to give me a confirmation at these other windows. So we're going to take a look at that. So in our first important segment, which is the B2, really our most important segment of the day, we are dealing with the light purple pH 2 hour. So we're going to go back to the prior hour that's the same color, the prior pH 2 segment, and that's over here later in the prior day, and we're going to look to see where we have a color of an important pivot. So what we're going to do is look to see where we have pivots in that area of that light purple, and we have that here. So we've got this more significant high is coming in and that's going to be in the purple hour on the pH2, and that's going to be in the dark purple pH1 over the light purple pH2. So I come back here and I want to strike a line where I have the dark purple and that is right in there, and that puts me in at that low. Now this one's a little tricky because I've got a little high, low, high here, so I could have an indication. I've got an indication on the purple, the blue, and the yellow segment, where that yellow segment there gives me the second top. So I could get another indication over there in that yellow box right there. So that gets me in right at that high. So the high comes in right there, right between that dark blue and yellow box. So we get a double indication there. We get this slow to the sharp move up, and then we reverse at the high, which is the same kind of a pattern that we had here in that prior window, where we go high, low, high. So we're going to expect quick pivots in time because we had quick pivots in time in the same prior segment. So that's how we have to treat that when we're using these things together. Remember the pH, we have the 5 standard triggers every day, and then we also have the ones that we can go back and find on our look back where the pivots that have formed prior can form again. So what we do then, we just take a look at each of our rainbow time zones, our B1 zones, and look to see if we have a pivot back on the pH the same color in the past. If we do, then we have a double confirmation for a move. Now when we move to the next window, which is right here at about 2:45 a.m., I am right there at the start of the gray hour, gray over gray. So to see if I have an indication, I've got to go back to the last gray hour right here at 2000 the night before, and you can see where my cursor is right at the start of that gray hour, end of the red hour, we had a high. So I can look to expect a pivot, most likely a high at the start, end of the red hour, start of the gray hour here in my window. So you can see right there, I have a high right there at the start of that window, right at the beginning of the gray hour. So I've got a nice confirmation that as price action is moving upward into the start of that window, because I had a high gray over gray here, I can expect to get another pivot, and since I'm moving upward right to that point, I can expect that to be a high, and that continues the trend down. Now in my next window, in that window, I am transitioning from red to gray on pH1 right here in the blue pH2 hour. So I look back to where I have that gray over blue to the prior hour, and that's right here the night before, and where I had come into that gray hour, I have another high. So I have a high there, so I can expect to get that again. I can expect to form a high in this window right here, and that's what I get. I get that high window with the pH alignment of gray over dark blue, and I also have a very small confirmation on the A3 white bar. Now the next one, I have this narrow white window here. I struck the blue vertical line. I am at the beginning of the dark purple pH1 over the light purple pH2. So now I go back to see what happened at that point in the last pH2 light purple hour, and I had a prior pivot there at 1:28 a.m., which we had identified here. So I have another repeat of that segment. In this place, it was a low, and I'm forming into a low at this indication here at 8:12. So there we are. So now I'm going on 16 minutes. I covered the first initial 5 opportunities, so you can follow through and do the rest of the day just like this. But this is purely just matching up the color code on the pH1 and pH2 of what happened in the past to see if we can expect the same thing again to happen at that next point in time when that pattern repeats. Now you can also use the pH3 like we do with the standard indications. So there are plenty of videos out on that. I've explained this in videos many times in the past. I'm doing this now because I had a request to show this on the gold chart. So the same principles are going to work in any market. They work on gold just like they work on the ES. Once you learn how to understand and read the pattern, you can get these prime and scalp setups and have really good trade indications.